Hello and welcome back to Tutoring with Gavin. In this series of videos, I'll be analysing the characters in the play Macbeth by William Shakespeare so that you can get your grade 9 in the GCSE English Literature exam. In this video tutorial, I'll be exploring the character of Banquo. Banquo is in a relatively small number of scenes, and yet he has become one of the most talked about characters in the play. He is Macbeth's co-commander in Duncan's army, which places him at the meeting with the witches in Act 1, Scene 3. Banquo immediately appears to be sceptical of the witches, mocking them that look not like the inhabitants of the earth, unwilling at first to even consider them as women. Your beards forbid me to interpret that you are so. He seems amused by Macbeth's reaction to the witches' prophecy. Why do you start and seem to fear things that do sound so fair? He teases the witches into predicting his future and is provided with riddles to decipher. Lesser than Macbeth than greater. Not so happy, yet much happier. Thou shalt get kings, though thou be none. Banquo asks Macbeth, have we eaten on the insane root that takes the reason prisoner? He clearly thinks that any rational being should ignore the witches. Banquo seems disturbed by Macbeth's reaction. It is strange, and oftentimes, to win us to our harm, the instruments of darkness tell us truths, win us with honest trifles, to betray us in the deepest consequence. He understands very well that the agents of evil can tell us simple truths to gain our trust, in order to manipulate us in other matters. This concept is at the heart of the play, because the witches have not created any magic at this point, only tapped into the knowledge of Macbeth's success in battle and using this to tamper with his massive ego. The fact that only Banquo understands this makes him so important to the dramatic rising tension, because he chooses to keep this information to himself. He has a moral dilemma: stay loyal to Macbeth and hope that he takes the right path, or warn Duncan. Quite rightly, he watches and waits to see where Macbeth is going with this, but ultimately he waits too long, and this indecision proves fatal. At the start of Act 2, he admits to having sleepless nights, worrying about the witch's prophecy. And yet I would not sleep, merciful powers, restrain in me the cursed thought that nature gives way to in repose. Later in the scene, Banquo tests Macbeth's intentions when he brings up the witches again in conversation. Macbeth retorts by questioning Banquo's loyalty to him. Instead of playing political games, as would have happened in the royal court during James's reign, Banquo chooses to be completely honest, which may actually seal his fate. So I lose none in seeking to augment it, but still keep my bosom franchised and allegiance clear. I shall be counselled. He is making it clear to Macbeth that he will do nothing to lose his honour, and will remain free from obligation to anyone but the king. Banquo is the most likeable character in the play, honest, rational and measured, almost prophet-like, and yet no one seems to be taking much notice of him. Duncan has chosen Macbeth to put upon a pedestal because of his viciousness in battle, while the more insightful and intelligent Banquo is overlooked. His soliloquy in Act 3, Scene 1 reveals his true thoughts about Macbeth to the audience. I fear thou playest most foully for it. Perhaps his indecision is linked to his own prophecy from the witches, perhaps subconsciously wishing that his children could become kings if he does not challenge Macbeth, that myself should be the root and father of many kings. The ambiguity over Banquo's true motivations stem from his speech. He clearly suspects Macbeth and yet has told no one, and by remaining silent allows Macbeth's rule of terror to grow. However, whether he is indecisive or complicit, the audience by this point are rooting for Banquo, as he seems to represent good against the growing evil of the Macbeths. And so his death is both dramatic and poignant, with Banquo sacrificing his own chances of survival in order to keep his son Fleance safe. The symbolism of his death and subsequent resurrection as a ghost is clear for the contemporary audience of churchgoers. Banquo is represented like a Jesus figure, as he dies in order to save Scotland in the long run from tyranny. Macbeth is tormented by this resurrection. The time has been that when the brains were out, the man would die, and there an end. But now they rise again, with 20 mortal murders in their crowns. This image of a bloody crown around his head would not have gone unnoticed by the God-fearing audience of the time. Of course, it suits Shakespeare to compare Banquo to Jesus, because everyone in the royal court would have been aware that James descended from Banquo. And this fits perfectly with the concept of the divine right of kings. James needed good PR at this point in his sovereignty. After the gunpowder plot, and the reluctance of some in England to embrace a Scottish king. Interestingly, in real life, Banquo's relationship with Macbeth was very different. In Raphael Holinshed's historical book, Holinshed's Chronicles in 1587, it says that Banquo was an accomplice to Macbeth in the murder of the king. Shakespeare may have changed this to please the king, or simply to protect himself from any displeasure felt by the king had he told the truth. All writers at this time were well aware of the fine line they were treading when writing about issues of royalty and heritage. Well, I hope this has helped you in your revision. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to the channel so you can get any notifications of more videos that might help you in your revision. Until next time.